Imagine it's the eve of the new millennium in 1999, and the world is abuzz with anticipation for the technological wonders that lie ahead. Meanwhile, a decade-long plan is culminating as the euro currency makes its grand entrance onto the global stage, subtly concealing a revolution that would shake the foundations of global finance. But let's rewind the clock for a moment. In the backdrop of this financial whirlwind, an unlikely group was orchestrating a revolution, one that would leave the world stunned. These were not financial gurus, nor industry titans. They were ordinary Japanese housewives, women who managed their households with grace and efficiency. But these women were about to embark on an extraordinary journey that would take them from their kitchen tables to the forefront of international finance. They affectionately referred to themselves as Mrs. Watanabe. Mrs. Watanabe embarked on a quest for financial independence, armed with nothing but their unwavering determination and personal computers. How, you may wonder, did this group of Japanese housewives transform into financial powerhouses and redirect the course of the world economy from the comfort of their homes? There are strategies that they followed, and we are going to discuss them all. But before we delve deeper into this captivating journey, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget to ring that notification bell so that you never miss a moment of our updates. Now, let's dive in. The genesis of Mrs. Watanabe's trading journey. Back in the 1980s, Japan experienced an economic boom of epic proportions, solidifying its position as the world's second largest economy, just behind the United States. Real estate and stock markets soared to unprecedented heights. However, this economic euphoria came crashing down in the 1990s, leaving Japan grappling with a significant downturn. As economic growth stagnated, the Bank of Japan slashed interest rates in a bid to stimulate the economy. People began saving money instead of borrowing. But with interest rates at rock bottom, the returns on savings were dismal. Frustrated by the paltry interest rates, Mrs. Watanabe decided it was time to take control of their financial destinies as Japan struggled to regain its footing. Their quest for financial empowerment led them into the world of foreign exchange. Mrs. Watanabe started trading in foreign currencies, making calculated decisions based on economic indicators and political events. What strategies did they employ? The ingenious yen carry trade. As diligent housewives, Mrs. Watanabe needed to make their money work harder. Since Japan's interest rates were abysmally low, depositing their savings in a bank offered only meager returns. Unwilling to settle for less, they devised a brilliant strategy known as the yen carry trade, which would soon make them famous. Here's the magic. Recognizing that Japan's interest rates were negligible, they borrowed money from Japan at these low rates and invested those funds in other countries, reaping high interest returns. They pocketed the difference and managed to pay back their low-interest loans, still ending up with substantial profits. Clearly, Mrs. Watanabe were no ordinary housewives. They were astute financial strategists. The Russian financial crisis. Undeterred, Mrs. Watanabe continued to wield their financial prowess with the carry trade strategy. Foreign borrowers were delighted to secure loans, and over 1,000 Watanabe women across Japan joined the ranks of financial trailblazers. Business was booming, and the carry trade was the hottest ticket in town. But, as fate would have it, a financial tempest known as the Russian financial crisis struck the global financial landscape in 1998. Russia found itself unable to meet its financial obligations, sending shockwaves through the investment community. Investors, gripped by fear, sought safer havens for their money, and one of the most secure destinations was none other than Japan. Comforted by Japan's low interest rates, all they desired was a sanctuary for their investments, away from the specter of bankruptcy. Yet, as investors flocked to Japan, the value of the Japanese yen began to surge, posing a new challenge for Mrs. Watanabe. Remember, they had borrowed money at low interest rates in Japan and lent it out at higher rates elsewhere. Now, everyone was rushing to invest in Japan, causing its low interest rates to skyrocket. Suddenly, the Japanese yen gained unprecedented strength, making it increasingly costly for Mrs. Watanabe to repay their debts. The lucrative returns they once enjoyed began to wither away. The Russian financial crisis served as a stark reminder that even the most ingenious strategies were not immune to risk. Quantitative easing. After the Russian financial crisis, Mrs. Watanabe and all others involved in the carry trade were struggling with the losses, while Japan, on the other hand, faced its economic challenges. even though it was the first country in the world to introduce a zero interest rate policy in 1999. Another economic monster faced Japan. There was an increase in deflation, and Japanese people didn't spend their money immediately. Even though there was already a decrease in the prices of things, they waited for a further crash before making purchases. To curb this deflation, the Bank of Japan implemented a new strategy known as quantitative easing. Japan was also the first country to introduce this type of policy. With quantitative easing, the Bank of Japan created new money and purchased government bonds with lower interest rates. With quantitative easing, the government would be able to pay back the borrowed money at a particular agreed time. Quantitative easing was great news for the Watanabe women, as the lower interest rates signified increased profits because of the carry trade. But it was also a dicey one, as the wounds associated with the carry trade when the interest rate was increased were still very fresh in their minds. Despite all the risks involved in the carry trade, the potential reward was still quite alluring and could not be disregarded because the Japanese yen was less expensive to borrow. By 2005, more Japanese housewives embarked into online currency trading, and this made them famous all over the world. In between taking care of their homes and attending to their children, thousands of Watanabe women began forex trading with their computers, making use of their household savings or borrowed cash. Their stories were featured widely in the media, and they were referred to as the real housewives of Japan. As word spread about the Watanabe women's carry trade approach, many other participants, including major investors and even banks, joined the carry trade. They took out loans from nations with low interest rates and made investments in nations with higher interest rates, aiming for currencies like the Australian and US dollars. Financial experts warned that Mrs. Watanabe was taking a huge risk even with these revenues, and that the consequences of another financial crisis would be catastrophic. In 2006, the Bank of Japan put an end to quantitative easing and started increasing their interest rates gradually. With this, it was no longer favorable for Mrs. Watanabe's carry trade, as there was an increase in the cost of borrowing. Even as the Watanabe women battled with this, little did they know that another financial storm was looming. The 2008 financial crisis. Mrs. Watanabe women thought they had seen it all with the Russian financial crisis. They were shocked by the global financial crisis in 2008, which started in the United States with the crumbling of big investment banks like Lehman Brothers. Financial markets saw a slump, and many economies had severe recessions. What happened next? Just like it was with the Russian crisis, investors sought the safety of their investments, which led to an increase in the demand for the Japanese yen. This was another big problem for Mrs. Watanabe and other investors, which led to significant losses, as there was an increased cost in paying back the borrowed yen. The 2008 financial crisis reminded the Watanabe women once more that the world was interconnected, and that if anything goes wrong in one country, it could easily affect other countries in the blink of an eye. Even with this, Mrs. Watanabe didn't give up. Which strategy did they adopt next? Day trading. One would expect that Mrs. Watanabe would give up despite the different losses. That wasn't the case with these Japanese women. They continued to grow further and stronger. She learned from her mistakes and continued to study and learn various investing strategies. Their curiosity and search for knowledge birthed day trading. With day trading, they didn't wait for profits like they did with carry trade. They gained more financial autonomy and generated more income from her savings. Day trading became famous as there were a lot of technological tools at their disposal that taught people how to trade. With their personal computers, the internet, and various online resources, the Watanabe women could trade from their kitchens or any part of their homes. With this new strategy, Mrs. Watanabe showed that she was a versatile player in the world of global finance. Although day trading had its own risk, it was also filled with a whole lot of opportunities. Abenomics. By 2013, deflation in Japan was rampant, and the prices of things continued to drop drastically. Shinzo Abe, Japan's prime minister, unveiled an ambitious plan in December 2012. This plan was referred to as Abenomics. Abenomics employed a number of strategies, but in the case of Japan, it concentrated on two in particular: monetary stimulus and fiscal stimulus. With monetary stimulus, the Bank of Japan printed more money to stop deflation until inflation hit 2%. The government spent a fortune creating different infrastructures, from schools to hospitals, using the fiscal stimulus strategy. Their objective was to encourage more firms to expand, while also increasing the number of employment possibilities. This initially worked, and the Japanese stock market saw an increase of 30% within the first 3 months. This didn't persist, and the Japanese stock market experienced a sharp collapse, and Mrs. Watanabe was accused by many of profiting quickly during the time of high stock prices. Mrs. Watanabe was obviously skilled at the game, knew more about the stock market than most people did, and was prepared for either inflation or deflation because she had cash to spend. Mrs. Watanabe's crew has proven to the world that with resilience, anyone can be anything. From being ordinary housewives in Japan, they made their way into the global financial market and weathered every storm that came their way. With the advancement of technology, a variety of online tutorials and resources, it's certain that the modern Mrs. Watanabe would continue to outsmart the global financial world. What do you think about Mrs. Watanabe? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more informative content. Thanks for watching.